If you visited a dating site and you wanted to be absolutely sure that the person you're talking to is a woman and not a man, and they had a verification tag on there, verified by the UK government digital ID verification system, you would really hope that that's correct. Because otherwise, we might end up in a really stupid situation where you've got the government verifying a false fact. But that is exactly the situation we might be in. Likewise, if you're wanting to be sure that it's a man you're talking to and not a woman, you'd like to think that the trust mark is accurate. Likewise, if you're looking to employ a woman for a role and you want to make sure it's not a biological man, you'd like to think that the verification thing is accurate. But again, this may now be all turned upside down, despite the Supreme Court ruling. Allow me to explain. You may have seen my other video talking about the Data Use and Access Bill, which, without an amendment to make sure that it focuses on biological birth sex, may record the wrong sex, for reasons I'll explain a bit more in this video. We're on Secrets, please do subscribe. Now, let's take a look. This is the publication from October 2024 about the Data Use and Access Bill, fact sheet, etc. Digital Identities Explainer. A digital identity is a digital representation of a person or things about them. It lets people prove things without presenting physical documents and all of the information they contain. So it's a digital thing to prove a fact. So if you've got a company that says, please prove that you are indeed a woman, and they connect it to this digital ID and it says, yep, this is a woman. But in fact, it might be a man, for reasons I will explain in this video. That then causes chaos, because you've got government-verified data, which is just wrong. Ironically, it says here, from this year, these services will be given a trust mark to show that they meet the guidelines, and that they'll be managed by this Office for Digital Identities and Attributes. They'll be given a trust mark to say, we've absolutely guaranteed this is accurate. But in fact, it's not. And let me explain. Now, let me start at the beginning. Places like the NHS allow you to change certain things. And of course, with the GRC, you can change birth certificates and all sorts of stuff. But let's just stick with the NHS for now. Even without a GRC, this website, this is just one random NHS website that I picked up. Changing your name, title or gender with the NHS. Change your name, title, gender with the NHS at any time by telling your GP or your GP practice. Ideally, you should only change your gender marker and title when you feel that you are sure that this is your new permanent name and gender identity. They may ask to see your legal name change documents such as deed poll or stat dec. It's not a legal requirement that you present the documentation, but some GPs consider it good practice. And then they might ask you to put it in writing and sign it. And then they'll process it. They'll attach it to your number or create a new number. And then your new details are going to be registered on the NHS. The problem with that is that data might be picked up by this digital verification system, because this is one of the places they might pick up this information. And so if they pick up your gender, sex, whatever you want to call it, from the NHS as what you've told them it is, as in you've self-identified as that sex. And I don't mean this video to be any disrespect to anybody at all. I have very nice conversations with people who tell me they are trans, etc. And I have no issue with it at all. The problem here is that this data is going to be inaccurate. And I like things to make sense, and I like things to work. And when they are not making sense and they are a recipe for disaster, I take issue with it. Now, we had an amendment which was tabled. Allow me to find it. We had this amendment here, which was tabled by Conservatives to put in this clause into the Data Access Bill that says within 3 months of passing this act, they'll issue regulations that require these public authorities to collect, process, retain data where it's legal and lawful to do so under data protection legislation, and request and record sex data accurately in every circumstance where sex is collected in accordance with these terms. Sex meaning male or female only, based on sex at birth, natal sex, or biological sex, in accordance with the Supreme Court ruling we've just had, which clarified what it said in the Equality Act. Now, you might have heard just recently about the M&S cybersecurity attack, which forced them to shut down all of their online sales and systems. In fact, even as I record this right now, it's still showing that they've paused online orders. Now, you might be thinking, if this can happen to a company like them, what about everybody else? Because surely they would have been prepared for this. Well, the reports suggest they were not prepared for this, and one might only wonder why. But how did this happen, and what can you do about it? Well, this can happen to anybody. In fact, all it means is that someone's got access to their system through some sort of nefarious link or software or download that they've done, and it's given them access to their system. Because it doesn't matter how big the system is, whether it's your laptop at home or a big system like M&S online sales. So what they've done is they've used a ransomware software to get access to their system so they can browse around all their data files, and then they've encrypted them with a ransom message to say, if you don't pay us this amount of money, we're going to release these on the web or do whatever with them. And they could do exactly the same for you. So how can you protect yourself from exactly the same thing? Well, I partner with NordVPN for precisely this reason, because I use NordVPN daily because I spend a lot of time online on lots of different websites for news and all sorts of stuff. And you never know when you get a bad link or a bad download file, which might be a malicious website, a malicious download, or some kind of software that compromises your system. You can even get what they call session hijackers. So if you're logged into your bank and you're logged into your email and you're logged into, I don't know, YouTube or whatever else on your browser, if you click a bad link and then they get a session hijacking software, they can take over your browser session and have access to everything you're logged into. But NordVPN will flag up these malicious websites and downloads and hopefully prevent you from going any further and having your system compromised. And as a partner to my channel, I get you 4 months extra free using the link nordvpn.com/blackbeltsecrets. It's on screen, it's in the description below. It's cheaper than a cup of coffee. It's the peace of mind that you will know you've got this shield in front of you that will flag up these malicious websites. So hopefully you don't get hacked just like they did. So you won't have your system compromised and all of your logins leaked and all of your data leaked. So get your 4 months extra free using the link below, and I promise you, you won't be sorry. And in addition, to record the acquired gender, to recognize that under the Gender Recognition Act, so it is recorded as well, just that if you are looking to prove sex, it is to prove biological sex. For the reasons, any number of reasons. Think of a time when you want to be absolutely sure that the person you're talking to is biologically female. So you're employing for a role that you for whatever reason, you want a biological female in that role. Think certain examinations for women, and we want to make sure that they are conducted by women. And you want to be sure of that. Now, without this verification, it could mean that somebody who is actually biologically male has changed their gender on the NHS. That's picked up by the system, then verified and given a trust mark to say that this is female. Now, that amendment has been shut down by Labour, essentially. You can see the big red block here has voted this down. Now, you can see here, you can download a spreadsheet and you can take a look at the list. The ayes over here, majority of them are Conservative. You've got some from Reform. But when we switch this to no, then we can see here the vast majority are Labour. Obviously, Greens in there, some Lib Dems in there, Scottish Nationals in there. And otherwise, virtually all of these are Labour or Independents, Lib Dems, etc. However, not one of the Labour Party voted that this should pass, despite some of them actually saying that we do need this to make sense. We do need, previously having stated, we do need this to make sense. We do need accurate data recorded. We do need this verification to accurately record the sex of people that it's verifying. But equally damning, if we filter this to no vote recorded, we've got a whole list of Labour and Conservative and Lib Dems and others who just haven't voted. In fact, we've got 186 with a quick count at the bottom there. 186 did not vote, including, for whatever reason, Nigel Farage. I don't know why that is, but no vote recorded. So a whole load of people did not vote to have an accurate record of birth sex on a government verified digital ID that will allow people to prove facts about themselves to show that they are male or female. And now coming on to what the ICO said about the Data Use and Access Bill. The ICO looked at this, Digital Verification Services, and said, I'm supportive of the government's development of the Digital Verification Trust Framework. The digital verification scheme is designed as an alternative to the physical identity route, increasing protections for people's privacy whilst delivering economic benefits. The ICU has and will continue to provide regulatory advice to the government on data protection matters in the development of the scheme. Now, I would respectfully suggest that this needs an addendum to say, well, it really ought to be accurate following the Supreme Court ruling that, man means man and woman means woman, to ensure that accurate data is collected. Nonetheless, it goes on, my focus is on helping government get the data protection considerations right. I want public trust and confidence in both this and other digital ID systems, with appropriate protections in place for people's information rights. Now, the obvious argument against this is, well, some people don't want their true data to be collected and they want to keep that privacy. But in that case, you shouldn't be using the digital verification service. You shouldn't be able to digitally verify with a trust mark issued by the government that this is correct, whilst retaining some information. You can't really have this both ways. You can't have a situation where you want to prove these facts, but only the facts that you want to prove, because they're not facts. It just doesn't make sense. You shouldn't be able to prove something where it's just what you've said it is. If it's not the case, if it's not your birth sex, then you shouldn't be able to prove that it is, because it isn't. And again, I don't mean this with any disrespect to anybody, but this just doesn't make sense to me. How can you possibly have a situation where you get a government verified, literally trust mark? The irony knows no bounds. How can it be a trust mark when you can't trust what it means? So my view on this would be, if this doesn't go through, which I'll tell you what happens in a minute, but if this doesn't actually go through, this amendment, and this bill becomes an act without any such amendment, so somebody can use their self-ID gender to verify their sex, then we won't be able to trust it, because you'll end up in a situation where people, they will be trying to employ somebody to ensure whether they're male or female and won't be able to do so. You'll have websites trying to ensure that somebody's male or female on their website, and they won't be able to do so because they just won't be able to trust it, because it won't be accurate. Necessarily, it won't be accurate. In many cases, obviously, it will. One of their arguments, of course, is that there aren't many situations that this is going to arise, therefore we don't need this amendment in. But 363 voted no, which would result in inaccurate sex information being recorded against someone's digital ID. It's absolutely ludicrous. So what happens now? Because that's not the end of the matter, it rarely is, and that's why I talk about it on my channel. So now essentially we have what we call the legislative ping pong. So it's gone through the report stage in the Commons, which was yesterday, and now it's going back to the Lords for consideration of Commons amendments and or reasons. And so this includes those amendments which have been accepted, rejected, etc. So all the way through, these things do bounce back and forth to consider these amendments, and these can make or break a bill, even at very late stages. But we'll have to see what happens, because quite frankly, this just, to me, strikes me as a bit of a nonsense. It's a really serious issue, which, even if it only occurs in a tiny percentage of people and use cases, it's still a significant risk, because it still means somebody will be able to digitally verify with a government trust mark a fact that is, in fact, false. Utterly bizarre, but that's where we are. Now, there are obviously different ways of looking at this. Some people would argue that there's a possibility of leaked data, hacked data, or certain situations where people won't be able to prove their lived experience, so they won't be able to prove that they lived their life as a woman, even though they have, as they say, transitioned, etc., and they won't be able to prove that. But you don't have to agree with me here. I just happen to think that if you are verifying as fact with a government seal of verified trust mark, that it should be accurate and people should be able to trust it. But there it is. There's a record of Hansard, all the debate here, which resulted in the vote down of this amendment. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Open discussion. I will never get angry with somebody for disagreeing with me. You are free to do that, so long as it's polite. There's no reason to be impolite and rude to somebody, as some people are, usually on X, but not so much here on YouTube. But anyway, thank you for watching. Please do like the video and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.